Mira Dalen watched the Pelagis delegate drift through the bridge. The air smelled of recycled compounds and warm metal. The delegate moved like a piece of paper caught in a slow current. Vellix stopped at the helm station. Their gill slits pulsed with a soft blue light. The rhythm matched their breathing. Their translucent fingers hovered over the control panel. They did not touch it. They examined the interface with patience. A biologist might show the same patience toward a pinned insect. Mira felt the weight of the silence and stepped forward. She spread her hands. This is the primary helm. We routed navigation through the central console for simplicity. Vellix turned. Their voice was like water running over stones. Simple is one word for it. No psionic integration at all. You pilot by touch alone. We manage, Mira stated. The delegate made a gesture. The gesture might have been a shrug. Their skin rippled where the bridge lights caught it. I am certain you do. The question is how far your methods can take you. Captain Tessa Bray stood at the rear of the bridge with her arms crossed, saying nothing as she watched Vellix the way she watched everything. Calm, still, recording. Vellix drifted to the center of the bridge. They addressed the room. The Pelagis Guild is prepared to offer a trade. Your FTL drives schematics for access to our navigation charts. The full terms are on the datapad. Your engineer has not looked at it. Soren Aldis glanced up from his datapad. He did not look embarrassed. He looked annoyed. I was getting to it. Take your time. Vellix's tone carried a hint of amusement, but the offer has a window. The guild values efficiency. We cannot hold a route open indefinitely. Captain Bray spoke for the first time. Her voice was low and even. We understand. We will review the terms. We will respond within the standard cycle. Vellix inclined their head. That is acceptable. They paused. May I observe your engineering section? I am told your building methods are unusual. Mira felt something cold settle in her chest. The delegate was not here to negotiate. They were here to measure, to evaluate, to decide if humanity was worth anything at all. She forced a smile. Of course, Soren can show you around. Soren looked like he would rather eat glass. He stood and walked toward the door. He did not wait. Vellix followed with the same drifting motion. Their bioluminescence pulsed evenly. The door closed behind them. Captain Bray turned to Mira. What do you think? Mira tapped her fingers against her thigh. I think they are not here to trade. They are here to see if we are worth the trouble. Bray nodded slowly. Then let us give them something to see. The engineering bay was a chaos of cables and half-assembled components. Soren stood at a workbench. He held a plasma cutter in one hand. A piece of salvaged conduit lay on the bench. Vellix hovered near the door. They watched with unreadable eyes. Soren did not look up. The Pelagis propulsion tech is beautiful, I will give them that. It is also completely impractical to manufacture in quantity. Every drive is hand-tuned by a specialist trained for decades. We could not build one of those in a year if we tried. Mira leaned against the doorframe. She kept her voice low. You sound like you respect it. I do. Soren set down the cutter. He picked up a component. The component looked welded together from scrap. That does not mean it is useful. Vellix moved closer, their eyes fixed on a small device sitting on the bench. It was a recycler. The casing was dented. Wiring was exposed in places. It looked like something that should have been thrown away years ago. What is that? Vellix asked. Soren picked it up, prototype recycler. It converts organic waste into printable feedstock. I built it from salvage. Does it work? Soren handed it to them. See for yourself. Vellix turned it over in their hands. Their fingers traced the crude welds. They touched the exposed circuits. Their expression did not change. This is not elegant. No, Soren's voice was flat. It is not. But I built it in 3 days. I used parts destined for scrap. It works. It will keep working. And if it breaks, I can build another one in 4 hours. Vellix handed the device back. They said nothing. But Mira saw something shift in their posture, a new angle of attention. The ship's comm system chirped. A voice rang through the bay. Bridge to engineering. We have a distress signal. Scarath freighter near the outer belt. Mira felt her pulse quicken. She looked at Soren. He was already reaching for his jacket. The bridge was quiet. The distress signal played on a loop through the speakers. A Scarath voice, high and clipped with fear, then static, then nothing. Mira studied the trajectory data on the main display. The freighter drifted near the edge of the system's asteroid belt. No engine output. No life support readings, just the signal repeating. Captain Bray stood beside her chair. She placed her hands on the back of it. Her knuckles were white. How old is the signal? Mira checked the timestamps. At least 12 hours, possibly longer. The delay makes it hard to pin down. Vellix floated near the rear of the bridge. Their bioluminescence had dimmed. A Scarath vessel in distress is unfortunate, but it is not your concern. You have no obligation to respond. Mira turned to face them. They are in trouble. We can help. The Pelagis delegate's eyes were flat and cold. Help. A word you use freely. You do not know what you will find. You do not know what they will demand in return for your charity. Captain Bray spoke without looking away from the display. Mira, assessment. Mira took a breath. The Scarath are a known species. They have diplomatic contact with the Pelagis. A rescue builds goodwill. It shows we are capable and willing to assist. The risk is minimal if we approach with caution. Bray was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she nodded, set a course, full burn. Vellix made a sound like a stone dropped into still water. A laugh. You will learn, human. You will learn that goodwill is not a currency the galaxy accepts. Mira met their gaze. Then we will teach them a new exchange rate. The ship shuddered as the drive engaged. The hum rose through the deck plates. The stars outside the viewport began to shift. Mira watched the display. The Dawn Chaser swung toward the outer belt. The distress signal played one more cycle, then it stopped. No fade, no static, just silence. Mira looked at Captain Bray. Bray was already staring at the same readout. Her jaw tightened. The signal cut out, Mira stated. It did. Bray's voice was cold. Vellix drifted closer. Their voice was soft. That is not a power failure. A power failure bleeds out over minutes. That was deliberate. The ship accelerated toward a silent wreck. Vellix drifted near the main airlock of the Scarath freighter. The cargo bay was a tomb of ice and failing light. Emergency strobes painted the compartment in dull amber pulses. Every surface wore a crust of frozen condensation. The temperature sat just above freezing. Vellix felt their membranes stiffen. They had not been designed for this. 3 Scarath huddled near a flickering console on the far wall. They were reptilian. Their scales were the color of rust. They exhaled plumes of steam with each rasping breath. One of them held a pressure bandage against its own flank. The wound was recent. The smell of blood hung sharp and coppery in the stale air. Mira Dalen stepped past Vellix. She did not look at them. She moved like someone with a decision already made. 2 human crew members followed her. They carried cutting torches slung over their shoulders. Their boots clanged against the grated deck. Vellix spoke. Their voice came out wet and strained. It carried none of the melodic cadence from the Dawn Chaser. This vessel should be sealed. Pelagis quarantine protocols require a 5-cycle isolation period before any salvage operation. The reactor failure could have released contaminants. Mira did not break stride. They're alive in there. That means the atmosphere is stable. That is not the point. It is the point for me. Vellix's gills fluttered. They followed the human into the cargo bay. They stayed close to the wall where the ice crust was thinnest. The Scarath looked up as Mira approached. Their eyes were yellow with vertical pupils. One of them spoke. The one with the bandage. Its voice was a dry whisper. You came. We sent the distress call 3 weeks ago. We thought no one heard. Mira crouched. Her knees popped in the cold. We heard. What happened to your reactor? Rapid neutron degradation. The containment lattice cracked. We shut it down before it breached, but we lost all power. Life support is running on emergency cells. They will fail in 12 hours. 12 hours. Vellix processed the number. A Pelagis salvage team would need a minimum of 3 days to reach this system, even under emergency transit. The Scarath were dead unless someone acted now. But acting now meant violating protocol. It meant working without guild oversight. It meant making decisions unapproved by the Technocracy Council. Vellix opened their mouth to state the obvious. Soren Aldis walked past them instead. The human engineer carried a handheld scanner. A tool belt hung heavy with equipment assembled from scrap. He did not stop at the Scarath. He walked directly to the reactor access hatch. He knelt. He pressed the scanner against the seal. Mira stood Soren. Reactor is cold, dead, no radiation leak. The containment lattice held long enough to vent the plasma through the emergency ports. Vellix moved closer. Their bioluminescence pulsed faster than normal. You cannot diagnose a reactor failure from a single surface scan. Pelagis engineering protocol requires full spectral analysis. It requires a ritual cleansing of the diagnostic equipment. It requires at least 2 master artisans to confirm. Soren did not look up. I can fix it in 6 hours. That is impossible. 6 hours, Soren repeated. He stood and turned to the 2 crew members with the torches. Strip the hull panels from Section 7. I need the alloy plates, the copper wiring behind the secondary conduits, the coolant regulator from the auxiliary pump. Move. They moved. Vellix watched as the humans began to dismantle the Scarath freighter. They cut into the bulkheads with torches. The torches sprayed white-hot sparks across the deck. They pried panels loose with crowbars. They worked without a single blueprint displayed on any screen. They did not consult a psionic link. They did not pause for ritual. They simply worked. Soren set up a portable welder in the center of the cargo bay. He began cutting the scavenged hull plates into new shapes. His hands moved fast. He did not measure twice. He did not measure at all. Vellix drifted toward Mira. Their voice dropped. This is reckless. You are weakening the structural integrity of an already damaged vessel. If the welding fails, you could cause a cascade failure. The reactor could be destroyed entirely. The Scarath will die. Mira watched Soren work. Her fingers tapped against her thigh. Soren has been building things since he was a kid. He built his first car engine at 14. He rebuilt the Dawn Chaser's recycler from salvage parts. A Pelagis technician would have thrown those parts away. That is not the same as reactor repair. Reactor repair requires apprenticeship, 10 cycles minimum. The guild's knowledge is accumulated across generations. We don't have generations. Mira spoke with finality. We have 6 hours. Vellix fell silent. The cutting continued. The welding continued. The humans did not stop to eat. They did not stop to rest. They worked in overlapping shifts. They handed tools to each other without speaking. They anticipated each other's movements like a single organism. Soren welded a new housing for the containment lattice. He patched the coolant regulator with wire and a piece of hull plating. He rerouted the primary conduit through the backup junction. He bypassed the cracked section entirely. His face was slick with sweat despite the cold. 3 hours passed, 4. At 4 hours and 11 minutes, Soren sealed the final access panel. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. He stepped back. Try it. One of the Scarath survivors activated the startup sequence from the console. The reactor hummed, the lights flickered, then they held steady, full power. The Scarath survivor sagged against the console. Its scales rippled. Its eyes closed. The other 2 made sounds Vellix recognized as crying, a rasping exhalation. It carried grief and relief in equal measure. Mira turned to Vellix. Tell your guild we're done here. Vellix did not answer. They floated near the reactor access panel. They stared at the weld seam. It was ugly. It was lumpy and uneven. It left visible slag on the edges. A Pelagis master artisan would have polished it smooth. They would have applied the sealing compound in precisely 9 layers. They would have chanted the binding ritual over the finished work. But the reactor was running. The Scarath were alive. Vellix turned away from the weld. They drifted toward the airlock. Their bioluminescence pulsed at irregular intervals. Their gill slits were fully open. They drew in air that felt too cold and too dry and too thin. They found a private communications node in the connecting corridor. They keyed the encryption sequence for guild channels. The link connected after a brief delay. Prelate Nerex answered from the orbital sanctum. Their ancient face filled the display. Their eyes were pale and calculating. They studied Vellix with the patience of someone never surprised by anything in 300 cycles. Report, Nerex's voice was flat. Vellix paused. They did not know how to shape what they had seen into words. They tried anyway. The Scarath freighter has been repaired. The reactor is operational. Nerex's expression did not change. By whom? The humans. How long? 4 hours, 11 minutes. Nerex's skin flickered. The pattern was subtle. Vellix recognized it as the equivalent of a frown. That is not possible. The requisite guild protocols are extensive. They did not use the protocols. They did not consult a single guild manual. They did not perform any ritual. They cut pieces off the hull. They welded them into the reactor. It was crude. It was wasteful. It violated every standard of Pelagis engineering practice. Vellix drew a breath. Their voice dropped, and it worked. Nerex was silent for a long moment. Then they leaned forward. The motion was slow, deliberate, weighted with gravity. These humans do not understand limits, Vellix reported. They do not follow the guild's wisdom. Nerex's eyes narrowed. Then bring me a human engineer. The command rang in the empty corridor. I want to understand this. Mira felt the low thrum of deep current station vibrate through the soles of her boots. It was a pulse like a distant heartbeat. She kept her hand against the curved wall as Prelate Nerex glided toward them through the humid air. The surface was slick and warm. Nerex moved with deliberate slowness. Their skin had a milky patina, ancient and clouded. Gill slits fluttered along their throat. Each pulse of bioluminescence was a soft green. The light reflected off the organic walls. Behind them, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, a shipyard. Mira stepped forward. Soren was already at her shoulder. Grease still sat under his fingernails from the Scarath repair job. His eyes scanned the space with quick, hungry movements. The chamber dwarfed anything humans had built. A half-finished hull hung in the center. Skeletal frames of woven resin supported it. Pelagis artisans drifted around it. Their movements were slow and precise. Each one carried a tool. The tool looked more like a living extension of their arm. They applied strips of living metal to the frame. Then they waited. The metal bonded, grew, pulse by pulse. Nerex spoke. Their voice carried the quality of water over smooth stones, a calm surface with something hard beneath it. This is the deep current yard, third circle. Here we shape vessels to navigate the void for centuries. Mira nodded. She said nothing. She was gathering intelligence. Soren pointed at the hull. He did not bother with diplomacy. Why do they apply it by hand? Nerex turned their head. The movement was slow. Deliberate. Apply it by hand? That is the only way. I mean, Soren's tone was sharp. Why not use a mold? Pour the living metal into a form, let it set. You could do the same work in days instead of weeks. One of the nearest artisans stopped. Their tool hand trembled. A low trill escaped from their throat. It sounded like an insult. Nerex raised a hand. The artisan went silent. You speak of molds. Nerex's voice carried an edge. Forms, repetition. You would force the metal to take a shape not its own. That is not creation. That is violence. Soren frowned. It is efficiency. Nerex drifted closer to Mira. Their milky eyes held her gaze. Every vessel we build is unique. A bond exists between the maker and the material. The metal remembers the artisan. It responds to intent. A molded hull has no soul. It would fail under stress. It would not sing in the void. Mira kept her face neutral. She understood what Nerex was offering her. A philosophy, a worldview, and a test. She chose her words carefully. In a crisis, speed matters more than artistry. The Scarath freighter had 12 hours of life support left. Your protocol would have let them die. Nerex's bioluminescence flared. Once, twice. Then settled. You mistake urgency for wisdom, human Mira. The galaxy is patient. Those who rush create ruin. Soren shifted his weight. He was not listening anymore. His eyes were fixed on the hull, his head tilted. His breathing changed. Mira knew that stillness. She had seen it before. Soren's voice was flat. That hull has a stress crack. Nerex turned. Their movement was faster now. A sharp pivot. Explain. Soren pointed at a point near the midsection. The artisan applying the living metal had just sealed a seam. But underneath the fresh growth, the previous layer had failed. A hairline fracture, almost invisible. The kind of flaw that would propagate under load. The kind that would kill. Nerex stared at the hull for a long moment. Then they gave an order in their own language. A trilling sequence that made the artisans freeze. One of them drifted to the hull. They ran a sensor over the seam. The sensor chimed, a different note. The artisan's gill slits went white. Nerex did not speak. They did not need to. The silence in the chamber was louder than any word. Mira watched the realization spread through the Pelagis like a slow poison. The artisan guild had missed a flaw. A human had seen it. A human who did not bond with metal, who did not sing to the void, who built things with molds and recycled scrap, who called it good enough. That human was right. Soren broke the silence. He spoke to Mira, not to Nerex. If you let me set up a temporary forge on this station, I could fabricate a replacement hull plate in 12 hours. 20 if the feedstock is low grade. Mira saw the opening. She stepped into it. Prelate Nerex, consider a joint project. Human mass production to support Pelagis artistry. Your artisans create the design. We manufacture the components. You finish the soul work. Everyone wins. Nerex did not answer immediately. They drifted away from the hull. Their bioluminescence had dimmed to a dull amber, a low pulse, a slow rhythm. The guilds would never accept it. Nerex's voice was flat, devoid of its earlier confidence. You would cheapen the craft, reduce it to numbers, to repetition. You would let your ships fail because the artisans are too slow, Mira countered. Stress cracks will kill more of your crew than any battle. Nerex turned to face her fully. For the first time, Mira saw something other than condescension in their eyes. It was unease, a barely contained fear. You do not understand. Nerex's voice trembled. The guilds are the foundation of our society. Every Pelagis knows their place, their purpose. The artisan bonds with the metal, the navigator bonds with the void, the technocrat bonds with the network. If you replace the artisan with a machine, you destroy more than a profession. You destroy meaning. Mira held their gaze, and if you refuse to adapt, you destroy your people. The silence stretched. Soren shifted again. His hand drifted to his pocket. He wanted to build something. He always wanted to build something. Nerex saw the gesture. Their gill slits fluttered. The audience is over. Nerex's voice was cold. You will be escorted back to your vessel. The Guild Council will discuss your proposal. Do not expect a favorable outcome. Mira nodded. She had expected nothing less. They walked back through the curved corridors. The bioluminescent strands in the walls pulsed with steady light. The thrum of the station's systems continued like a heartbeat, a living place, a civilization built on ritual and expertise. And Mira had just told them their rituals were killing them. Soren spoke quietly as they reached the airlock. He did not look at her. That crack was not an accident. Mira stopped. What do you mean? I mean, I have seen that kind of failure before. Soren's voice was low. It happens when the bonding ritual is rushed, when the artisan is under pressure. Someone on that station is pushing production faster than the guilds can handle. Mira stared at him. The implications clicked into place one by one. The Pelagis were not calm and patient. They were stretched thin. The guilds were struggling, and Nerex was terrified the humans would expose the lie. The airlock hissed open. A Pelagis messenger stood on the other side. Their bioluminescence was high and fast, panic frequency. Prelate Nerex sent me. The messenger's voice was ragged. There has been an incident. The human embassy on Freeport 7 has been bombarded by an extremist faction. The Guild Council has declared war. The bridge of the Dawn Chaser stank of burned insulation. Emergency lighting painted everything in shades of amber and gray. Captain Tessa Bray stood at the center of it. One hand braced against the command rail. Her cropped gray hair was streaked with soot. The tactical display showed the impossible. Pelagis ships moved through the asteroid field like eels through still water. They fired in perfect sequence. 3 human vessels were already dead in the water. 2 more were crippled and falling behind. The psionic network. Every Pelagis pilot knew exactly what every other pilot was doing. They did not communicate. They shared intent. Tessa watched a human frigate explode in silence. She did not flinch. Mira Dalen sat at the sensor station with her head in her hands. Her dark hair had come loose from its tie. Her shoulders were tight. Tessa spoke without turning, assets remaining. The bridge crew gave her numbers she already knew. 8 operational ships, 1 ammunition carrier barely intact, 3 repair tugs unsuited for combat. Tessa stated the words flatly: full retreat, coordinates for the Gotha belt. Mira lifted her head. That will put the asteroid field between us and them. And trap us against the gas giant. Yes. Do it. Soren Aldis appeared at the navigation console with a bandage wrapped around his left forearm. Grease stained his neck and his jaw. He looked at the tactical display and did not blink. He informed them they could use the asteroids as raw material. How? Soren tapped the console. 12 mining ships are still operational. We strip ore while we move, refit in real time. Mira stared at him, in transit. Soren said yes as if it were obvious. The forge microbes work fast. Feed them asteroid ore and they grow new plating in minutes. We bolt it on while we drift. Tessa considered the plan for 3 seconds. She gave the order. The human fleet changed course. The Pelagis followed. The next hour was the longest of Tessa's life. She stood at the command rail and watched her ships die one piece at a time. A destroyer lost its main cannon to a precise particle beam. Soren patched a mining ship alongside it. The crew bolted 3 smaller guns from a wrecked freighter onto the same mounting bracket. It worked. The destroyer fired again. The recoil twisted the bracket. The ship compensated. Tessa did not smile. She tracked the ammunition counter instead. Vellix watched from the brig monitors. a Pelagis prisoner in an undamaged cell. Their translucent skin had gone pale gray. Their gill slits pulsed weakly, a slow and steady rhythm that meant stress. They asked to speak to Mira. Mira found Vellix sitting on the bare floor of the containment cell. The Pelagis did not stand when she entered. They did not raise their head. Vellix spoke without preamble. "The guild is fracturing." Mira sat down across from them. She rested her elbows on her knees and waited. Vellix described the schism in low, wet tones. Some of the council wanted a truce. They saw human adaptability as a resource to be cultivated and controlled. Others demanded total subjugation. They saw the same adaptability as a threat requiring elimination before it could spread. "Which side are you on?" Vellix's bioluminescence flickered. "I am on the side that watched you rebuild a warship in 43 minutes. I have no word for what I am." Mira stayed silent. Vellix spoke again. "Your species does not build things. You grow them. You repair them while they are still moving. You change the plan mid-combat and the new plan works. We make mistakes. You make adjustments. The difference is acceleration. We refine a design over generations. You refine it in the time it takes one of your engineers to walk from the bridge to the cargo bay." Mira watched Vellix's posture shift. The Pelagis was not angry, they were afraid. Vellix said the Pelagis had never encountered a species like humanity, a species that treated failure as data, a species that adapted faster than their own technology could track. That was not the problem. "What is?" Vellix met her eyes. "You make us obsolete. The guild has spent 10,000 cycles perfecting craft. A single human with a forge microbe crate replicates our best work in an afternoon. That is not a diplomatic problem. That is an existential crisis." Mira understood then. The war was not about territory. It was not about resources. It was about the Pelagis looking at humanity and seeing their own extinction written in industrial logic. If craft could be mass-produced, then craft had no soul. If everything could be replaced, then nothing was sacred. The humans were not just winning battles. They were dismantling a philosophy. She stood up. She walked back to the bridge. The tactical display had gone red. The Pelagis fleet had cornered them against the gas giant. 3 vectors blocked escape. A 4th was blocked by the gravity well. The human fleet was out of space, out of options, and running out of ammunition. Tessa stood at the command rail. Her voice was flat and steady. She did not curse the situation. She did not bargain with it. She accepted it. Mira joined her. "How long?" Tessa glanced at Soren. Soren did not look up from his console. 20 minutes before we run dry." Mira heard the words land. She heard the silence that followed. Tessa spoke to the entire fleet. "All ships, prepare for final engagement. We will sell it as hard as we can." The bridge crew did not protest. They did not weep. They adjusted their stations and waited. The communications officer spoke. "Captain, incoming message." Tessa turned. The officer said the message was from the Pelagis flagship. Prelate Nerex was requesting a personal parley. No ships, no weapons, just voices. Tessa held still for 3 seconds. She said, "Put them through." The speaker crackled. The voice that emerged was old and slow. It carried the weight of something breaking. "Captain Bray, I would speak with your delegate, the one called Dalen." Tessa looked at Mira. Mira did not hesitate. She walked to the communications station. She pressed the transmit key. She said, "I am here." Prelate Nerex stood barefoot on the crystal floor. They felt every degree of cold rise through their translucent souls. The parley sphere was a perfect lens. It showed the starscape in all directions. Distant suns burned steady. The gas giant Gotha hung like a bruised eye. Rings glittered with debris that had once been ships. Nerex could hear their own gills pulsing, the sound amplified in the absolute quiet. They had never felt so exposed. Mira Dalen sat across from them. She wore a bandage wrapped around her left forearm. The fabric was stained with something dark. Her eyes did not blink. They did not drift. They stayed fixed on Nerex with a patience heavier than any weapon. Vellix stood between them. Their bioluminescence dimmed to a pale blue. They had refused to sit. They were no longer an envoy. They were a bridge that had already cracked. Nerex spoke first. Their voice came out thin, like water seeping through a fracture. "The Pelagis have never lost a war." Mira tilted her head. Not a nod, not a challenge, just a shift of attention. "Humans have never lost a war we truly believed in either." Nerex felt the cold climb higher. The human did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply stated the fact as if it were weather. This was how they fought, not with postures or rituals, with statements leaving no room for negotiation. Nerex let the silence stretch. They counted their own breaths, 12 cycles of gill pulses before they spoke again. We cannot win a prolonged conflict. The words tasted like poison. Nerex had never spoken them aloud before. They had whispered them in council chambers. They had written them in sealed missives, but saying it here to a human in a crystal room drifting between burned ships, that made it real. Your output is growing faster than our attrition allows. The human ships we destroyed last cycle have already been replaced. Your forge microbes consume asteroid ore. They produce hull plating in hours. Our artisans require weeks to shape living metal by hand. You do not need to beat us. You only need to outlast us. Mira did not smile. She did not gloat. That is correct. Nerex waited for the demand. Every Pelagis negotiation followed a pattern. The offer was made. The price was set. The ritual was observed. Mira said nothing. The silence stretched until Nerex understood. The human was waiting for them to name their own terms. She already knew what she wanted. She wanted them to admit it first. Nerex pressed their bare feet harder against the cold floor. The pain helped them think. What do you offer? Mira leaned forward slightly. Not aggressive, just present, a truce. We share mass production techniques. You share psionic navigation data, equal exchange. Nerex felt their gill slits contract. The thought of it was profane. Mass production techniques were not simply methods. They were a philosophy. Sharing them would mean teaching every guildless world how to build without ritual, without artistry, without the slow bond between artisan and metal. The guild system would collapse within a generation. Nerex opened their mouth to refuse. Then they looked at Mira's bandaged arm. They looked at the starscape beyond the crystal. Somewhere out there, human ships were being grown from ore that had been rock 3 days ago. They were being crewed by people with no forge ritual experience. They were winning. The alternative is extinction. Nerex said it flatly, not as a question, as a conclusion. Mira did not deny it. We know what symbiont armor feels like against human skin. The whisper came from Vellix. Their bioluminescence flickered as they spoke. We have recovered wreckage. We have examined the bonding patterns. Nerex turned to face them. Vellix had been their student once. Now they looked like a stranger wearing familiar gill slits. What do you mean? Vellix gestured toward Mira without looking at her. Human ships are fielding symbiont armor. They reverse-engineered it from battlefield salvage, and they have already improved it. Nerex felt something cold that was not the floor. The armor was a living thing, a bond that required ritual and trust. It required the slow growth of a relationship between host and symbiote. Humans had no bond. They had no ritual. They had simply taken the technology. They had dissected it. They had rebuilt it faster than the original design. They had absorbed it, remixed it, made it their own. That was not adaptation. That was consumption. Nerex turned back to Mira. What do you want? The human's eyes stayed steady. Her voice stayed flat. We want to trade not as clients, as equals. Nerex almost laughed. The sound would have been hollow and wet, like water collapsing into itself. Equals. You have been in the galaxy for less than 20 cycles. You have no guilds, no traditions, no artistry. You build the same ship 1,000 times and call it efficient. You have no soul in your metal. Mira did not flinch. Our ships stay built. Your ships stay beautiful. I think there is room for both. The silence returned. Nerex heard their own gills laboring. They heard the faint hum of the station systems. They heard Vellix shift their weight. Then Vellix spoke again. I propose a new guild. Nerex turned so sharply their neck joints audibly clicked. A new guild. Vellix met their gaze. The younger Pelagis trembled slightly, but their bioluminescence held steady. Half Pelagis, half human, we blend artistry with volume. Our artisans shape the initial forms. Your factories produce the substructures. We bond the living metal to the mass-produced frame. The result is faster than our methods, more refined than theirs. Nerex stared at them. The idea was monstrous. It violated every principle of guild tradition. A guild was a closed body. It was built on generations of shared knowledge. You could not simply open the door. You could not invite in a species spacefaring for 20 years. But the alternative was extinction. Nerex looked at Mira. The human had not spoken during Vellix's proposal. She had simply watched. Her eyes had not widened, her posture had not shifted, she had let Vellix make the case. And Nerex realized with a cold clarity she had planned it this way. She had not come to demand surrender, she had come to let them invent their own surrender, so they could call it a compromise. Mira Dalen was not a diplomat. She was a predator who offered a chair at the table. Nerex lowered their head, the motion was slow, deliberate, their gill slits flattened against their throat. "I will sign the truce." Vellix exhaled. The sound was soft, like a wave retreating from shore. Mira simply nodded. Nerex pressed their hand to the crystal table. The surface warmed under their palm. It read their biometric signature. The document appeared in lines of pale light. It was written in both Pelagis script and human text. Nerex did not read it. They had already read it 3 times before the meeting began. They knew every clause. They pressed their palm flat. The lines turned gold. The truce was sealed. Mira stood, she moved toward the door. Then she paused, she did not turn around. "You made the right choice, prelate." Then she was gone. The human guard outside fell into step behind her. The door sealed with a soft hiss. Nerex stood alone in the crystal sphere with Vellix. The starscape rotated slowly. The gas giant stared at them like an unblinking eye. Vellix moved closer. Their bioluminescence had dimmed to a faint amber. It was the only way. Nerex did not answer. They pressed their bare feet against the cold floor one more time. They felt the crystal's chill travel up through their joints, through their spine, into the place where their thoughts lived. They whispered, so softly Vellix had to lean in to hear. "We have given them everything. They will not stop here." Vellix's gill slits flared. "What do you mean?" Nerex looked at the starscape, at the distant suns, at the void between them. They absorb what they take, they remake it, they improve it, and they keep moving. We have taught them our navigation, they have taken our armor, they have seen our guilds, they have learned everything we are. Nerex turned to face Vellix. "And they are still hungry." The forge heat hit Soren Aldis the moment he stepped through the airlock. It pressed against his skin like a living thing, sweet and chemical. The smell of resin and steel mixed into something that did not belong to either species alone. He stopped at the railing and looked down. The station was ugly. That was the first thing he noticed. Human steel frames jutted out at hard angles. Pelagis organic panels curved between them like wet membrane stretched over bone. Nothing matched, nothing flowed, but it held vacuum, it held pressure, it worked. Below him, a dozen Pelagis engineers moved through the scaffolding. Their gait was slow and drifting. Their gill slits pulsed soft blue. Beside them, human workers in scuffed boots and weld-scarred gloves climbed the same ladders. They passed tools to each other without words. The rhythm was there, still rough, still learning, but there. Soren walked down the metal ramp. His boots rang against the grating. Vellix waited near the main forge bed. Their translucent skin caught the orange glow from the molten feed. He pointed at the mold array, 6 rectangular frames arranged in a circle. Each one held a growing sheet of living metal. First batch, Soren's voice was flat, commercial grade, 2.3 centimeters thick, adaptive response time under 4 seconds. Vellix drifted closer. Their bioluminescence flickered faster. They reached out one webbed hand. They touched the surface of the nearest sheet. The metal rippled under their fingers. It recognized the contact. It adjusted its crystalline structure to match the pressure. Healthy, Vellix's voice carried that water over stone's quality, full bond viability. "This is clean growth." Soren nodded. He did not smile. The metal spoke for itself. Vellix pulled their hand back. Their gill slits fluttered. "I have spent my entire life watching artisans shape living metal by hand. Each ingot blessed. Each curve whispered into existence over days. You poured liquid feed into a mold. You waited 6 hours. It works." "It does." Vellix paused. Their bioluminescence dimmed to a steady pulse. "I thought your methods were inferior because they lacked intent. I was wrong. They lack intent because they do not need it. Your intent is in the system, the mold, the process. You build intent into the machine itself." Soren considered that. He had never thought of it that way. He just wanted the metal to form fast and hold shape, but Vellix was not wrong. Both approaches have strengths. Soren's tone was even. Your stuff lasts longer, ours replaces faster. Together we cover each other's gaps. Vellix made a sound like bubbles rising through water. It might have been laughter. Mira Dalen walked down from the command deck. She had datapads under one arm. A tired smile pulled at her mouth. Her dark hair had come loose from its tie. She looked like she had not slept in 3 days. She looked satisfied. Message from Earth. Mira's voice was light. The Pelagis trade routes are open. First shipment went through yesterday. Human goods are flooding the sector. Soren raised an eyebrow. Flooding. Mira laughed, low and genuine. Grain shipments, medical supplies, replacement circuit boards. The kind of stuff the Pelagis guilds take weeks to produce individually. Earth shipped 50,000 units in one batch. Vellix turned slowly. Their gill slits went wide, 50,000 in a single cycle. Mira nodded. We call it Tuesday. Vellix did not respond. Their bioluminescence pulsed once, twice. A slow rhythm that might have been calculation or shock. Soren could not tell which. He walked to the next workbench. A hybrid thruster sat mounted on a test stand. The casing was human steel. The internal chambers were Pelagis organic alloy. The nozzle blended both. Human precision shaping, Pelagis thermal resistance. Soren slapped the casing. This is the new model. Pelagis efficiency rating. Human manufacturability. We can produce one every 4 hours from a single forge bed. Vellix drifted closer. They studied the welds, the seams where two engineering philosophies met and refused to separate. You built this in 4 hours. Soren shook his head. We designed it in 4 days. We built the first prototype in 6 hours. Then we built 10 more in the next shift. That is the difference. Vellix touched the casing. Their fingers traced the joint where steel met organic alloy. They said nothing. A comm unit chirped from the control room. Mira grabbed it. She listened for a moment. Her expression shifted from tired to alert. Soren watched her. What? Mira held up one hand. She listened for another 5 seconds. Then she lowered the unit. Skarath delegation just arrived at the outer beacon. Her voice was sharp. They want to talk about a similar partnership. Soren grunted. That is fast. They have been watching. Mira turned to the window. The Thornwall sent a greeting too, cautious, formal, but they reached out first. Vellix straightened. Their posture changed. The cautious optimism in their bioluminescence turned to something sharper. The Thornwall species is territorial. They do not initiate contact unless they see value. Mira smiled. Then we showed them value. Vellix stared at her. Humans have been in galactic space for less than a decade. You have already reshaped trade routes. You have already made enemies into partners. You have already. We talk fast, Soren cut in. Vellix made that bubbling sound again. It was definitely laughter this time, different pitch from human laughter, but the same rhythm. Mira walked to the observation window. The station hung in black space. Below it, a Pelagis world curved in deep blue and green. Its oceans caught starlight. Its cities glowed along the shorelines. Vellix joined her. Soren stayed by the forge. He watched the living metal grow. He watched the Pelagis engineers work beside human ones. He watched a Pelagis artisan kneel beside one of his molds. The artisan pulled a small hand tool from their belt, a curved blade, fine-tipped. Soren stepped closer. He watched the artisan lean over the mold. Their hands moved with careful precision. They traced a line along the edge of the structural beam, a curve that did nothing functional, a flourish, a decoration. The artisan looked up. Their bioluminescence flickered uncertain. They gestured at the beam. A small thing. The artisan's voice was soft. The metal does not mind. It accepts the shape. Soren stared at the beam. The human mold had produced a perfect structural component, straight, reliable, efficient. The artisan had added a single curve, a wave pattern, a signature that belonged to no machine. He nodded slowly. Keep it. The artisan's gill slits fluttered. They did not speak. They returned to their work. Soren turned away. He did not know why that small gesture hit him so hard, but it did. The human method produced the beam. The Pelagis method made it theirs. Both approaches had strengths, and for the first time they had merged into something that honored both. Mira's voice came from the window. Soren, come look at this. He walked over. Mira pointed at the view screen. A human-built factory orbited the Pelagis world below. It was a blocky thing, functional, ugly. Its solar panels caught the star's light. Its conveyor arms moved in steady mechanical rhythm. That is the medical supply plant. Mira's voice carried pride. First joint facility, producing vaccines and wound sealants for both species. Soren watched the factory. It was small. It was crude. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The comm unit chirped again. Mira picked it up. She listened. Her face changed. The tired satisfaction drained away. Something cold took its place. Soren felt his stomach tighten. What is it? Mira looked at him. Her hand stayed on the comm unit. Distant sensor ping. Something massive just entered the sector from outside the mapped galaxy. It is not Pelagis, it is not Scareth, it is not anything in our charts. Vellix's bioluminescence went dark. The silence stretched. Soren looked at the factory, at the forge, at the living metal growing in human molds, at the Pelagis artisan who had carved a flourish into a structural beam. He looked at Mira. How far out? Mira stared at the view screen. The factory orbited steadily. The Pelagis world rotated in silence. Whatever it is, she said, it is accelerating. The vibration started as a low hum beneath Mira Dalen's boots. She felt it through the deck plating, through the recycled air, through the bones of her feet. The observation deck was empty when she arrived. A single window dominated the far wall. A slab of reinforced crystal showed the void beyond. And there it was. It hung against the stars like a hole in the sky. A ship the size of a moon. It moved with unnatural silence. No running lights. No emissions signature. Just a dark disk that swallowed every photon that touched it. Mira pressed her palm against the cold glass. The hum deepened. The forge below was waking up. The door hissed open behind her. Prelate Nerex entered. Their gill slits pulsed a slow amber. Vellix followed a step behind. Their translucent skin caught the starlight. Neither spoke for a long moment. Nerex moved to the window. Their milky eyes tracked the object. The attention was careful. The recognition was death. That is an abyssal vessel. Nerex's voice was flat. Mira did not turn. We thought your species was the only advanced civilization in this region. We are the only one you can talk to. Nerex's voice carried no warmth. The abyssal are older than us, older than any recorded history. They drift through space. They drain resources from inhabited systems. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They simply take. Vellix stepped forward. Their bioluminescence had dimmed to a pale turquoise, the color of deep water pressure. The Pelagis have records of 12 systems the abyssal have passed through. All 12 are dead, every world stripped of usable material. No structure left standing. No life. Mira's fingers tapped against the glass. Have you ever fought them? The silence stretched. Nerex's gills contracted in a long, slow breath. No one fights the abyssal. Nerex's voice was barely a whisper. We avoid them. Their migration paths are charted. We evacuate affected systems. We wait for them to pass. It is the only strategy that has ever worked. Evacuation means survival. It means relocation. It means loss, but it does not mean extinction. The hum from the forge changed pitch. A higher note now, something like a long exhalation. The forge microbes were feeding. Mira's comm unit chimed. She tapped it. Dalen. Soren Aldis' voice came through tinny and flat. Mira, the object just changed course. She felt the blood leave her face. Show me. The tactical overlay appeared on her comm screen. A simple holographic projection. The abyssal vessel had altered its trajectory by 3 degrees. The new heading intersected directly with a green dot. It was labeled Pelagis Prime Agricultural Zone 4. Nerex made a sound Mira had never heard from a Pelagis. A soft clicking deep in the throat. A species-specific expression of dread. That world supports 8 million Pelagis. Vellix's voice was tight. It is the primary protein source for 3 sectors. Evacuation would take 200 cycles. We have maybe 100 hours. Nerex's bioluminescence dropped to a dull mud brown. We do not have the ships to move that many. Not in time. Mira stared at the overlay. The abyssal vessel was still moving. Silent. Patient. Inexorable. 100 hours until it reached the agricultural world. That was not enough time for diplomacy. Not enough time for evacuation. Not enough time for anything the Pelagis considered reasonable. But it was enough time for something else. Soren, Mira's voice was steady. Can we build a weapon fast enough? A pause, the sound of fingers on a datapad. Soren's voice came back flat and measured. Define weapon. Something that stops that thing. Kinetic impactor. Soren spoke quickly. A rock. Big one. Human factories can produce the delivery frame in 3 weeks. The projectile itself we can grow from asteroid ore in 12 days. That is if we divert all forge feedstock to a single node. Nerex turned to face Mira. Their gill slits pulsed faster. A rapid rhythm of agitation. 3 weeks. That is 14 cycles. The abyssal vessel will reach the agricultural world in 100 hours. Your timeline is irrelevant. The timeline is tight. Mira's voice did not waver, but it is not impossible. Soren's voice again. We can accelerate the forge cycle by 30%. We sacrifice structural integrity. The projectile will be cruder, less aerodynamic, but it will still hit with the same mass. Mass is what matters. Nerex's eyes widened. The pale, milky surface of their iris contracted. It revealed a ring of deeper gray beneath. You would build a mountain and throw it. Mira held their gaze. We would. That is what we do.